All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Fundamentals of Financial Planning webinar presented by SC&H Financial Advisors. My name is Angelo Romano, and I'm a financial advisor and CFP professional with the SC&H Wealth Management team. I've worked in the financial industry for about the last 19 years and with SC&H for about 3.5. And today I'll be joined by my colleague, Shane Cavanaugh, who is also a financial advisor on our wealth management team. Today, Shane and I are going to be talking about the fundamentals, and we're going to be discussing some of the building blocks that will help you create a strong foundation for your financial future. And while each one of these topics that we're going to go over today could really be its own webinar in itself, we're going to give you some high-level insight and some general guidelines to help put you on a path towards financial success. So most of you on this call have probably interacted with SC&H before, but for those of you who haven't, SC&H was founded in 1991 primarily as a tax accounting firm. About 10 years later is when we established our wealth management practice. And today we provide comprehensive financial advice that includes investment management, tax planning, life insurance, and estate planning to over 500 families, individuals, and businesses. So now that you know a little bit about who we are and who the firm is, let's jump into the material. The areas that we're going to be covering today are these 6 areas that you see on the screen. And like I said, we're not going to spend a ton of time on each one of them, but just give a high-level overview, some guidelines, and some tips that we think will help you have a better understanding as you walk away from the webinar today. So the first area that we're going to start with is income and cash flow. And you may be thinking, why are we starting there? This is about retirement and saving for the future, but saving for the future starts with your income. And the reason that we're starting there is because your income is your greatest wealth building tool. Every month, every week, every year, you only have so many dollars that are coming in the door. And what you do with those dollars can have a huge impact on your financial situation. And the main thing that you want to take away from your income is that the more that you keep, the faster you will build wealth. So what does that really mean? One of the things that we recommend here, and one of the guidelines that you've probably heard of before, is to pay yourself first. And that means putting 15% of your annual salary away in some kind of retirement savings plan for down the road when you do retire. But keeping more of it is more than just saving for retirement. It's also making sure that you're living within your means. And if you have a tuna fish budget, you're not eating steak and lobster every night either. So understanding where you're at, living within your means, and making sure that you are not overextending yourself. It also means to limit the amount of consumer debt that you're accumulating as well, too. And by doing that, you have to tell your money where to go. And when you are telling your money where to go, all of these different areas that we're talking about, saving for the future, living within your means, potential going out, planning, and whatnot, they all have a bucket, and they're all labeled as such. So this isn't only about saving for retirement, but this is saying, hey, this much needs to go here for retirement. This much is going towards a car payment. This much is going towards rent. This much is going to the fund account. It is totally fine to say, hey, I only want to dedicate X amount of dollars to doing extracurricular stuff so that you're not overspending in that area if that's a problem for you. You don't want to get to the end of the month, or some people, you get paid on Friday and you get to the end of the weekend and there's no money left. So telling your money where to go will help you make sure that you're directing it in the right way and prioritizing those goals that you want to achieve. Another thing to keep in mind here is that you should start slow and build. We say 15% of your annual retirement. And for some people, you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot to start off. And that's okay. On day one, you don't have to be fully dialed up and ready to go. You're not going to save $1 million over the first 6 months. This is a long process and a long journey. So if you do have to start a little bit slower and dial up, that's totally fine. That's one of the things that we work through with clients, is helping them prioritize where the dollars need to go and how much needs to go in what bucket. So don't feel bad if you have to start a little bit low and dial up over time. Another way to work on that income and that cash flow is to make sure that you are continuously working on developing new skills. Your income is really just a reflection of your ability to solve problems. The larger problems that you can solve, the more income that you can demand. That's kind of how it works out in the working world. If you can solve problems that other people can't, then you get paid more than they do. So I encourage everybody on this call to continue your personal development, continue reading books, continue educating yourself in whatever your field of expertise is. continue to raise your hand at work, do extra stuff, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty. And the more experience you get with some more complicated or complex scenarios is only going to help you in the long run. So now that we've talked about the importance of your income, let's look at a couple real life scenarios where we can put these in play. So what we're going to look at here, this is a scenario where you have I'll say a recent college grad. And this person in scenario A that I'm about to pull up, this person accumulated some credit card debt during college while they were at school, which is fine. It happens. Everybody runs into a time where they need to swipe something on a card when you're going through that phase of life. But as they went through school and they graduated, they got their new job and they were really pumped up about it. So they said, hey, I'm gonna reward myself with a brand new car at graduation. So they're coming out of college, got a new job, but also have some credit card debt and a car payment. So they have about $3,000 that's coming in the door every month. They know that they got to pay $1,000 in rent. That brand new shiny car that they spent $35,000 on and got a 60-month loan or a 5-year loan is costing them about $630 a month. Their credit cards, they have 4 different credit cards, and they said, I got to put at least $100 on each one of them to get the balance down. So they're paying $400 a month for credit cards. And then they got the essentials, right? You got to have food, got to have a cell phone these days. You got to pay car insurance, all those kind of things. So at the end of the month, they're only left with about $370. They keep a little bit of a buffer and they say, hey, I can invest $300. Well, $300 a month over 10 years at 7%, you can see is about $52,000 in savings. So on the other side of the equation, though, we have somebody who was a little more conscious about what the decisions were as they were coming out of college. This person said, hey, you know what? I got a car. It's working fine. There's nothing that I really need to do with it. So I'm just going to keep the one that I'm driving now. I'm not going to worry about getting a new car. And this person also made a conscious decision to say, hey, when I get out into the real world, it's going to be expensive. And I'm going to have a lot of things that I potentially want to buy and do. So I'm going to get 3 jobs over the summer and I'm going to get rid of that credit card debt. So this person has the same $3,000 a month coming in. They do have to pay the $1,000 rent, but that's really where it stops. There's no car payment. There's no credit cards. So this person does have the essentials. They still have to eat. They got to have a cell phone, insurance, whatever you want to add into those lines that are essential. But how much do they have left to invest? They have $1,400 a month. They're going to leave a buffer of about $100. They're going to put $300 into a short-term savings. And what that could be are any of those buckets that we were talking about before. They're going to create an emergency fund, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They're going to allocate some to buying their next car in cash instead of taking out a loan. And then they're going to also put some into the fund pot too and say, hey, we want to take a trip to Jamaica for the summer or something. So they're going to allocate some money to that. That still leaves them $1,000 a month that they can put towards long-term investing. And you can see $1,000 a month, 10 years at 7%. It's more than triple what the person in scenario A is able to save in the same time frame. So that there shows you the impact of keeping more of your cash and directing it towards wealth building versus directing it towards some of these other things that we all get caught up in. So one of the transitions that we're going to make now from income is over to debt management. And there's probably a few people in this call that are going, wow, I'm a little more like scenario B than scenario A. And that doesn't mean that you're a good person, bad person. It's indifferent, but some people have a little more debt than others. So what we're going to do now is look at how we take that debt and we clean that up so that you can have more of your money going towards building wealth. So when we talk about debt management, kind of said before, we want to avoid consumer debt when possible. And that's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. There's a lot of times where you get to the end of the week and you're like, man, it's been a long week. I'm exhausted. I just want to treat myself to something. You have to kind of step back from that situation and say, yeah, is it in the budget? Is it something that I want to do? Is this going to be something that I'm going to make this purchase now? And in 2 days, I'm going to go, man, that was a bad idea. So avoiding consumer debt when possible. And the easiest way to do this is to use debit cards versus credit cards, because you're going to think twice about swiping your card and having it come directly out of your checking account versus saying, oh, it's a credit card bill that I'll get at the end of the month and I can make payments on it. So basically the lesson here, or the guideline here is if the money's not in your checking account, don't buy it. Don't make the purchase. You're going to have to save up some cash in order to buy some of those larger items that you want to do. And speaking about credit card debt, The average credit card debt, the average balance that is carried on a card is around $6,000. The average payment is between 2 and 4% of that balance. So a couple $100 by racking up credit card debt is going towards debt servicing, even if you have a small credit card. And studies do show too, some of them as low as 12 to 18%, some of them as high as 409% more money spent when you're using a credit card versus paying cash or using a debit card. So some people have the argument of, well, I get rewards when I use my credit card. The rewards, the trade-off of getting rewards versus having that extra cash to be able to actually fund the things that you want to do, the trade-off is not good. It's not optimal. It definitely is better for the credit card companies than it is for you. So if you do have a little bit of debt and you're like, man, I really need to, you're doing some self-reflection right now and saying, hey, I really need to do a better job of paying this off and getting everything cleaned up because this is making sense to me. I want to be able to retire in a, with a decent amount of money and in a decent time frame, and I don't want to work until I'm 70. I need to take some steps here. So one of the things that we recommend is using the debt snowball. Some of you may have heard of that before, and some of you may have not. So we're going to walk through what that looks like now. So with the debt snowball, you basically take all of your debts and you list them from smallest to largest. And while you're looking at those debts, you say, okay, I got the smallest balance first. I know what the payment is there. You start to comb through your budget and say, do I have any extra cash that I can start applying towards that smallest balance? There's always ways to make cash. You can get a second job. You can look through your budget and reduce your expenses. Say, hey, I'm not going to spend on this. I'm going to make sure I put it towards paying off this debt because I want to change my behaviors and kind of move in a different direction. So once you find that extra additional money, you're going to then take that and you're going to throw it at the first balance, and we're going to get that balance paid off. Once that balance is then paid off, well, you're going to throw it all at that first balance, paying the minimum on everything else. Then once that balance is paid off, you're going to take the amount that you were putting towards that and move it down to the next smallest amount. We're going to get that one knocked out and just wash, rinse, repeat. You're going to keep doing the same thing until you're debt free. Now you're going to have a pile of money that you have been throwing at debt for the last couple of months that you now have at your disposal to help you build wealth. And one of the things that you may want to put that money towards is potentially, retirement, but also something like buying your first home. So we're going to talk a little bit too about some of the things to consider when you're purchasing your new home. I mean, when you're buying a new house, there's a lot of things to consider, and if you've never done it before, it can be daunting, and there's always something that can be missed. So we're going to break it down a little bit for you today. So the first thing, which we get asked all the time by clients that are going through this process for the first time, is how much can I afford? We have a rule of thumb that we use and a guideline that we use where we recommend that you don't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income. You can also calculate that by using 25% of your net monthly income. And sometimes somewhere right in between that range is where people usually fall. But those are the percentages that we recommend, and those are the guidelines that we use. Now, a lender is probably going to tell you much higher than that. And it doesn't mean that you can't afford it, but we also know too that you have to save for retirement. There could be children in the future. There could be 529 plans that need to be funded. If you're buying a house, you probably want to have furniture in it. Most people don't want to buy a house and be sitting on the floor when they invite their friends over, milk crates and candles, because you can't have electricity and furniture. So that's another thing you need to think about too, and being mindful how much of your budget is going towards that, because there's other mouths that need to be fed, as we've kind of talked a little bit in the presentation already. So figuring out that percentage and determining what that number looks like for you is something we help clients with all the time. Then comes into the acronyms. Your PITI. What does that mean? If you've never owned a house before, or you've never had a mortgage and you've never made a mortgage payment, it's kind of foreign. So the PI, that is your principal and your interest. So just like any other loan you have, whether it's a auto loan or a mortgage or whatever, that is your principal and your interest that goes to the lender for giving you the money to make the purchase of the house. So that pays the loan. The TI is your taxes, property taxes, and your insurance, homeowner's insurance. That portion of your monthly mortgage payment goes into an escrow account. And when you get your annual bill for your property tax and your annual bill for your homeowner's insurance, you send it to your lender and they will cut a check out of escrow and send that to pay those for you. Now, principal and interest is attached to the loan. You will pay that as long as you have a loan. Property tax and homeowner's insurance is attached to the structure. So as long as you own that building and you are a homeowner, you will pay those, even if the mortgage is gone. So things to think about as you're going through. And some other things to consider here is where you live can really increase or decrease the amount you're paying in property tax. The age of your home, the style of your home, the size of your home, the location of your home can also determine how much your homeowner's insurance is going to be. So there's a lot of different variables that go into how much these are. None of these are fixed costs. They will be once you determine, the loan you're going to use and where you're going to live. But in the beginning, they vary. So some other things to think about. There is money that needs to be upfront put down on the loan in a down payment. So we recommend that you put at least 20% down on your first home or in any home that you buy. And the reason that we recommend 20% is because it helps you avoid PMI. There's another acronym for you, and that's private mortgage insurance. And basically what that is either a lump sum that is added to the loan during closing or an additional part of your monthly PITI payment. It just goes to paying for insurance. And the insurance just basically says that you're going to make your mortgage payment because you have less than 20% equity in the home. So that can be a percentage of the actual cost of the house. 2 to 5% is usually what it runs. So that can add up too when you're talking about a house that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So having more of that money stay in your pocket by delaying the gratification. Take the time to save for the down payment and make sure that you set yourself up for success there. So closing costs is another thing to think about too. That can be, in Maryland, it can be between 2 and 5% of your home's final sale price. And that is just going to cover all the docs that need to be done. It's going to cover the creation of that. It's going to cover the title company's time to actually close the loan, all of your appraisals, your flood search, all of those things that are usually listed out on your HUD-1 that you would get. Then you have different financing options. We recommend using fixed rate loans. 15 and 20-year terms are what we recommend. You can go out to 30, but we recommend staying 15 to 20 years to make sure that it's paid off before you get to retirement and you still have plenty of time to keep saving for retirement. You can also go with an ARM loan, which is a adjustable rate mortgage. There are times where that makes sense, but you really need to talk with somebody and figure out if it's the right option for you. Then FHA loans and VA loans, and there's different trade-offs to each one of those, but encourage you to make sure you look into them and get with a person who truly understands how they work and how they function and any additional fees or trade-offs by having each one of them. And then ongoing maintenance and upkeep. Most people don't think about this. You can expect to pay between 1 to 2% of your home's appraised value on an annual basis on just maintenance and upkeep. Some years it can be up to 4%. If you have something major like your HVAC system goes up or water heater goes up or siding needs to be replaced, these are all things that you don't necessarily think about when you're looking at this beautiful house and you see your family living in it. You don't think, hey, 5 years down the road, I'm going to spend $25,000 on getting a new roof. So again, just things that we help you consider and we help you think about as you're going through this. So along with annual maintenance, that's an expense that you're kind of planning for, but life throws you a curveball every once in a while too. And there's going to be some expenses that are certainly unexpected, and that's where your emergency fund comes in. So the emergency fund is a pile of cash that you have set aside, and that covers life's unexpected expenses. Now, when I say unexpected expenses, this is not, like I said before, oh, I had a rough week. I gotta go buy myself XYZ, or oh, I gotta go away for the weekend, or man, I'd really like to get a trip to the beach, or I really need a new car. I'm gonna take some money out of the emergency fund to put that down on my car. This is for unexpected expenses that you don't see coming that could be detrimental to your entire lifestyle, meaning loss of a job, unexpected medical condition, temporary layoff, things like that are major life situations. So if you don't have an emergency fund, we recommend saving $1,000 as quickly as you can and getting that set inside a savings account and putting it somewhere where you don't touch it. We always recommend that you keep your emergency fund separate from your checking account and your regular savings account. So that is going to be kind of the first step, is saving $1,000. Some of these other things that we've talked about, you got to determine what the priority is. Are you paying off debt? Are you building the emergency fund? Are you saving for retirement? There's a lot of things to figure out. So part of the process when we go through and help clients is to help them prioritize which ones of these need to come first, second, third. We do them in phases. Once you're ready to actually build your full emergency fund, we recommend 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And you're probably saying, well, so why do I know if it's 3 or 6? Well, we recommend staying towards the 3 months of the living expenses if you have a 2-income household, and closer to the 6 month if you only have a single income household. And like I said before, keep it in a separate account. It's not included in your everyday spending pot of money that you could potentially, use when you're buying groceries or whatnot. This is kind of set off to the side so that when you do have something that really throws you for a loop, you're able to have some money to reach for and not have to swipe a credit card. So now that we've discussed some of the foundational pieces of your financial plan, only used for true emergencies, like I said before. But now that we've talked about some of the foundational things and some of the basic concepts around planning, we're going to take that 15% that we talked about way back in slide 1, and we're going to talk about what you're doing with that 15% and where it makes sense to save that and allocate it towards retirement. So Shane is going to jump in and talk to you guys about that.
All right, so again, let me go ahead and take over here, and in 1 second, I will be on. All right, so that should be coming through on your end. Again, my name is Shane Cavanaugh. I work with Angelo here in our wealth management group. I've been with SC&H for going on 2 years now. I've been in the industry for about 8 years. So a lot of these conversations and a lot of these steps are actually kind of not that far off from my relatively recent personal experiences. So it's really nice to sit down and really kind of run through this with all you guys, and your early career, and when you're just getting out of college and starting to make some of these decisions. This is when you can really have, since you have so much time on your side, this is when you can really have a huge impact on the trajectory of your retirement savings, and some of the choices you make can have a really, really large impact on what retirement looks like down the road. So jumping in here, we talked about a lot of the fundamentals: emergency fund, home purchases, different things like that. For my portion here, we're really going to drill down on, all right, we've determined we're going to save some money, whether that be ideally 15% or, whatever your budget allows when you're just getting up and running here early in your career. We're going to talk about where that money goes, kind of what are the most optimal ways to put that money to work, and what are some common places that those that are early in their career can start to begin to build that nest egg, to build that retirement strategy. So to start that out, we're going to talk through some of the most common retirement accounts you've likely already heard of, and really how to utilize them to their fullest. So most commonly, when you think of starting a new job, you've probably been offered paperwork and steps to enroll in your employer 401k or 403b plan. These are really the most common plans that you see nowadays, right? So a 401k and a 403b plan are essentially the same thing. You'll typically see a 403b plan if you work for a nonprofit, if you work for a hospital, school system, but they function very similarly. You may also see a thrift savings plan or the TSP plan if you work in a government job. Contributions can be made to these plans typically on a traditional, which is a before tax, or an after tax basis, which is Roth. We'll dive into this in a little bit more detail later, but it's just important to note that there are different contribution types. And another big benefit of these types of plans is commonly employers will offer a match, which makes it even more beneficial to go ahead and enroll in these plans, because if your employer says, hey, we're going to match your plan up to 5% and you only contribute 2%, well, that delta, that 3%, is money you've left on the table that the employer is no longer going to contribute to your plan. So especially starting a new job, changing jobs, different things like that early in your career, it's really important to familiarize yourself with how the 401k plan works, what the match is, what the schedule for vesting and all that is, because again, a lot of these contributions that the employer make are dollars that you won't get if you don't contribute up to their limits. Another big benefit, and potentially one of the most powerful benefits of employer plans and 401k plans to your job, is it'll really automate your savings, right? It's a lot harder to say, I'm going to take $300 out of my bank account every month and manually push it into my retirement account. But if you enroll in your 401k plan and every paycheck, biweekly, it comes out of your account, you don't even see it, it makes saving that much easier, and it makes it much easier to stick to that strategic plan we talked about. So moving along now, I do want to cover, because you may have heard about pension plans, right? Your parents or grandparents may even still get pension checks, right? And these were kind of the way that retirement accounts used to function in the years past. And a lot of the industry and a lot of employers have moved away from that, and they've transferred over from the more traditional pension system over to the 401k plan system, which puts a lot more of the responsibility on you as the employee and you as the investor. So we'll run through the main differences here, right? So what is the difference? Your grandfather or your grandmother has a pension plan. They get a check in the mail. They don't have to worry about investing it or anything like that. Why do I have to worry about my 401k? The main difference is really between how the two plans are funded. Pensions were traditionally funded by the employer. The underlying investments were managed by the employer. So it actually made things a little bit easier on the employee because they didn't have to worry about the investment choices and different things like that. But like I mentioned before, those have kind of gone to the wayside, and most of the plans offered by employees now are of the 401k variety. And again, highlighting how they're funded, employer plans are primarily funded by you, the employee, through your contributions, through profit sharing, through the employer match. Alternatively, the investment choices within your 401k plan are also made by, again, you, the employee, and you, the investor. So the return on those assets that you see, or the lack of return on those assets you see over the years, over working years and retirement years, is ultimately determined by the asset allocation that you choose for those contributions that go in every paycheck. So we'll dive into that a little bit as well here in a couple of minutes on the next slide here. So you may or you may not have a 401k plan. Again, most larger employers will offer you some type of 401k plan that you can roll in through work. Now, if you don't have a 401k plan through work, or as commonly you'll see, there may be a waiting period of 3 months, 6 months, a year before you're eligible to enroll in that plan. That doesn't mean, hey, well, I don't have a 401k plan, I can't do any savings, I'm going to go spend that on Amazon, right? There's other options we have available for you, where you can still take advantage of savings, you can still get on a savings schedule. So everyone's probably heard of IRAs, or individual retirement accounts. These plans function similarly to your 401k, your 403b plan. The main difference between the two is the IRA, the individual retirement account, is just like it sounds. It's individual. It's not linked to your employer. It's opened and it's maintained by you. We have the same type of contributions. We have traditional and we have Roth, so similar ways that dollars can flow into the accounts. One of the big differences there are contribution limits. And again, when you're just starting out, worrying about these contribution limits may not be as much of a factor as just kind of getting the wheels in motion and getting a savings plan started. But IRAs have slightly lower contribution limits at $6,500 versus $22,500 for your 401k. So again, you see that most common options here that you're going to come across, your traditional and your Roth IRA. And then we do have folks that work for small employers. Typically, these employers may not have the capacity or the HR team in place to handle managing a 401k plan. So you may also come across what's called a SEP IRA, which functions very similar to the traditional IRA. It's just used for small business owners. So this is something, and again, just to stress what Angela and I talked about thus far, is just the importance of starting early and establishing some sort of recurring, automated, systematic savings schedule is the power of compounding, right? The power of the markets and the power of time investing. So we have three different investors here, right? We have investor A, who starts at 25, investor B, who starts at 35, and investor C, who starts at 40 and doubles the saving of our first two friends here, A and B. So the savings assumed here is $300 a month, which again may seem like a lot, but when you think about it, especially if it's automated coming out of your 401k, it doesn't really amount to a big pile of money as you start to advance in your career. So what this is assuming, those dollars are doing 5% a year, so nothing crazy, just a modest return. But you can really see, if you start at 25 here, you can see the trajectory of those dollars as the interest and the returns on the investments compound. A small $300 per month investment can translate to almost $500,000 in assets when you reach that hypothetical retirement age of 65. You can also see the huge impact it has if you wait 10 years. If you say, hey, I'm in my 20s, I just want to have fun, I'm going to go out more, I'll start saving when I'm older. That is an approach that a lot of people do take. But if you look at the trajectory here, you almost cut in half the amount of dollars you would have at retirement age just by waiting an additional 10 years. And then you have our friend at scenario C here, who reaches age 40 and realizes, darn, I haven't really saved anything. I really have to put my foot on the gas and double my savings and do $600 a month into one of these employer plans. Not only do they fall short of our first investor here who started early, but doubling your savings and trying to scramble later in life can really have an impact on your cash flow, because it's going to require you to take more out of each paycheck just to try to catch up to the scenario we reviewed where you started early. So this really illustrates the power of just setting up recurring systematic transfers or contributions, and what that can amount to over time. So we talked a little bit about the different contribution types, and I know this is a big question for a lot of folks that are starting out is, should I do traditional? Should I do Roth? Where should my money go, right? What type of contribution should I make? So really quick, I'll just populate the whole screen here so you guys can run through this with me. But there's really, the main difference is when you get the tax benefit between your traditional and your Roth 401k or IRA contributions. So quickly here, traditional 401k contributions are made pre-tax, right? They reduce your income today. If you make $50,000 this year and you put $10,000 into your 401k on a traditional basis, well, you just reduced your taxable income to $40,000, right? So you have lower income. In theory, your taxable basis is less. So you get essentially an immediate tax benefit, a tax benefit this year. Then later in life, let's say your $10,000 grows to $15,000 in retirement. You go to withdraw that money to support your lifestyle in retirement. You draw it out to spend it. That's when those dollars are taxed. You pay income tax, federal, state, if applicable. So you're essentially deferring taxation on these dollars from today until later in life. The theory here is, hey, I'm making money today. In retirement, I'll probably be in a lower tax bracket because I won't have my income. So it'll be cheaper to defer these taxes down the road until I'm in retirement, right? Brief overview, but obviously we don't have all the time in the world. This could be its own seminar. On the flip side there, we have the Roth, right? So really just think about it as the exact reverse. So these contributions are made on an after-tax basis, right? The money comes out, you get the money gets paid into your bank account. Your federal, your payroll taxes, your state taxes are already deducted out. Then you put it into your Roth 401k or your Roth IRA after tax. So there's no immediate tax benefit. There's no tax benefit that year. The difference is those dollars. So again, $50,000, you make $10,000 as a Roth contribution. Well, you still have $50,000 in income, no deduction. The difference here is you get tax-free growth on principal, right? And the balance. So same scenario, you're 65, that's now $15,000 from your original $10,000. When you go to pull that out for income in retirement, none of that is taxable. So your tax benefit here on the Roth contributions comes down the road in retirement when you draw those funds out of the account. So we won't get too far into it because we're limited on time, but early in your career, when you're in your not necessarily up in the highest tax brackets you'll find yourself from earning potential, that's a really good time to make Roth contributions. Roth contributions are typically good when you expect to be in a higher tax bracket in your later earning years or even in retirement than you are now. Whereas traditional contributions are great if you assume that you'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, essentially making it easier to tap into the, or excuse me, less expensive from a tax expensive to tap into those dollars. So the next question is obviously, okay, we talked about Roth contributions. We determined we're going to get enrolled in our employer 401k plan. We're going to try to get up to that 15% target. Where should I be invested? Should I just put it in a money market fund? Should I put it in a whatever fund that automatically gets assigned to me? What are the asset classes and what are the investment types and what are the corresponding risks, returns, and reason for investing in these different types of asset classes? So instead of breaking it down stocks versus bonds versus CDs versus all these other things, we can really break it down into kind of three simple categories, right? A saver, a lender, or an owner, and the corresponding returns of those different investment choices, right? So a saver, think of someone who saves money, who puts all their money in the bank or buries it in the backyard. They're not looking for a much of a return, right? They just want to know their money is safe. They're not out to outperform the markets. They just want to know the money's there at the end of the day, right? So our saver class is going to be things like cash in your checking account, very short-term CDs or certificates of deposit, which are issued by banks, treasury bills issued by the US government. These are things where the main goal is to keep our principal value fixed, right? We don't want to lose money in these. As you can see though, the drawback, not losing money sounds great, but as you can see, the drawback there is obviously our returns tend to be at inflation, or as we've seen recently, even below inflation. So when you look at the impact inflation has on these dollars, you're typically returning pretty much zero at or near inflation, or in recent years in a higher inflation environment, we're actually returning negative, meaning these dollars are becoming less valuable because they're not keeping pace with how much things now cost in a higher inflation environment. So again, that's the saver class. Lenders, think of this as what you would typically think of as bonds, right? You're lending companies and countries and even cities money, right, with the intention of receiving interest payments and a return of principal at the maturity of those of that term. So these are things like bonds issued by companies, bonds issued by municipalities for infrastructure projects, different things like that. Longer term certificates of deposit, treasury notes issued by the government. Again, because there is some risk here, this asset class can fluctuate based on interest rates, especially like we've seen recently. There's a little bit of a return premium, as we can see here, over just that saver asset class. But again, it's still just a few points over inflation. And again, this is not going to give you the return that we'd like to see in a portfolio to ensure our assets are sufficient for a comfortable retirement. So moving down the line, and especially for folks like you who are newer in your investing strategy, have a really, really long time horizon, the majority of our assets are probably going to fall into this owner category, right? So what does it mean to be an owner, right? So think about a stock. When you buy a stock, if you go out and buy a share of Apple, what does that mean? That actually means you own one share of that company, right? So being an owner of those companies, or ideally a variety of different companies across the entire world, right, allows you to participate in their growth, allows you to receive dividends, allows you actually to vote on issues as a shareholder. So this owner category is where we can participate fully in global markets and the innovations and all the achievements of all these different companies around the world. As you can see, this is the only class here of our three choices that will give us a historical return and a historically inflation adjusted return that will significantly exceed inflation and give you the ability to really drive the return on your assets over time. Now, again, this asset class is also the most volatile. So you'll get a lot of up and down in these investments in stock ownership. But again, at the end of the day, through the ups and downs for our long-term investors, our long-term time horizon investors, like I'm assuming most of you are, the trajectory has averaged, again, roughly 10% a year over time.
So certainly appreciate everyone taking the time to meet with us today and jump on and see the presentation. Again, the QR code, you can certainly scan that. Here is also our contact information, so you can send us correspondence or contact us directly via phone, via email here. We're certainly looking forward to speaking with you if you have any additional questions, or if there was any questions that we didn't cover that you have. So looking forward to hopefully continuing the conversation with some of you, but appreciate everyone's time and hope everyone has a good rest of the day.